Hello, everyone. Cooperman257 here with new guest Frank.
Hello, everybody.
And for those who have not read the title, we are discussing yesterday's Gorton and Denton by-election. The long-awaited by-election, that would probably determine Labour's future, if you will. After resignation of, I believe, former MP Andrew Gwynn, this by-election has been a much hopped topic since Andy Burnham was blocked from it. As a result, arguably causing internal infighting with, the Labour Party as usual, and as a result, and also costing them their chance to win, if you will. But so then became the main contenders who will end up winning: Reform or the Greens, the two new rising populist stars in UK politics, if you will, led by even Nigel Farage or Zach Polanski. They each chose their candidates. Well, Labour chose a woman named Angeliki Stogia, the only thing I really know about her is that she's from Greece, which
it's I think it's pronounced Stoya.
Stoya.
I don't want to be pedantic about that, but
yeah, which arguably probably maybe not the best idea to do for a local by-election, but yeah, someone from another country. But yeah.
Well, to be fair, she's more of a Mancunian than Matt Goodwin.
Yes, and that was getting to the next one. A Reform's candidate is infamous, political, correspondent, commentator, later turned activist Matt Goodwin, who basically tries to promote whatever right-wing cause there is online, if you will. But yeah, so and once ended up eating his own book after getting the 2017 election predictions wrong. So yeah, and the Greens end up choosing. Sorry, what?
I didn't know about that.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you can find a dirty video on YouTube of it somewhere.
Oh, we'll do that, 100%.
Yeah, and then of course there is Hannah Spencer, the Green candidate, who is a local Manchester. Green Party member, maybe not necessarily in the actual area that she's running, but still part of Greater Manchester. I believe she was a plumber. Before, and we've got our first hello from Skullman. Though in truth, Apollo TD was here earlier, so hopefully they'll have some interesting comments to share about the discussion of this by-election, if you will. So yeah.
It's saying Josh is on the stage. I don't know what that means.
On the stage. Show comments on the stage. I think it means this bit here, what I'm showing.
Oh, right, okay. I'm not really used to StreamYard.
Fair enough. But at the moment, there is no more guests trying to join in, as I've only put the link inside the bullet chat, which I am not going to put in the YouTube comments.
Oh, yes, we aren't going to do that today.
For reference, we were both on a stream of Captain Swiss. We're discussing the actual upcoming by-election as Milkies, and let's just say a certain guest did a certain something that we had to reorganize. Yes, William, a name that will go down in infamy now in bullet chat history. So, but yeah. Anyway. Basically, we all have their candidates. They all ran their campaigns. Apollo TD says, I joined, but my earphone microphone isn't working. Well, that sucks, because I believe you'll be quite informative of this by-election, but yeah.
Oh, 100%. He had a lot to say last night when I was listening in after I left.
Yeah, so, but oh well, at the very least, your comments will be hopefully very helpful in case
we're going to need them.
Yeah. So, but yeah, basically the campaign has been going on for a while. Labour is determined to make sure the Greens do not win this, because if the Greens, of course, win, this will rally the left to them, if you will, and convince, and give voters another party that they can go to rather than them if they want to beat Reform. So let's see, they've done a bunch of on-hand tactics to, like, of course, let's see, sabotage the Greens, such as like doing their own polling, if you will, reform, and also attacking the Greens on their drug policies. Reform, my understanding, have done their standard, let's see, immigration, kind of rhetoric, from my understanding from the by-election. To be fair,
Yeah, their campaign was quite odd to me because when we get to the results in a few minutes, you'll find that their result was actually quite impressive by the standards of the seat. But yeah, their campaign was extremely odd and quite aggressive towards a lot of the constituents living in it.
yeah, it's like yeah, you'd think you'd pick someone more local and more based on the issues there, but yeah, and the Greens, of course, try to portray it as a bit more from economic and promises that Labour have broken, and to some extent, I believe the topic of Gaza got involved, from my understanding, as I think
Yeah,
Reform
100%.
Reform did do some attack ads on them being more of like aiming more at Muslims and all that stuff. Josh saying Labour peddling nonsense about Greens wanting to give kids meth, and Apollo TD I think the direct tactics of selection was from Labour and the Greens, both dodgy bar charts. Greens used quotes from politics professors they didn't say, and Labour said Greens can't win. Oh, okay, fair enough. But yeah, so everyone had their tactics, accusation, all that stuff. Let's see, with this by-election possibly determining the outcome of, like, let's see, Starmer's premiership. Let's see what left of it is, what happens with the Greens, and what Reform will do. There's all to play for, as the media portrayed it as a freeway election. And now that we've got that said, I think we can finally sort of get to the results.
These will be interesting.
Yeah, so from what we got here with our three candidates, let's see, I'm just going to share this one here first with Wikipedia. Let's see, and the results end up being the Greens winning by 40% of the vote. Let's see, a swing of 27.5 up with votes of like 14,980. Matt Goodwin, the candidate here, as we were talking about, this Hannah Spencer and this Stigaya. Let's see, Matt Goodwin got 10,578, up 14.6, leading to a total of 28.7%. And Labour's Aniskawa at 9,364 at 25.4%. Let's see, down 25.4%, basically losing half their votes. And if I find a more detailed polling chart, I think, which also shows the Lib Dems and the Greens. Let's see, the Lib Dems have gone down -2. Let's see, Conservatives gone down -6. As a result, making the Tories lose their deposit, from my understanding. So,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
This was a horrible by-election.
Let's
Conservatives.
see.
I think this might solidify them. I'm aware this is quite a progressive seat, Gorton and Denton.
Yeah.
This really
Go on.
this solidifies their position, I think, as no longer a massive political. He claimed to say the second oldest political party.
Sorry, what?
What I was trying to say is that I don't think the Tories are a big political power, and not in what I'm trying to say is that the decline has happened so far. Bigger picture.
Okay, what? Okay, I think you're cutting out a little bit there, dude.
I'm very sorry. I shall leave and rejoin.
Okay. Well, that is going on. I'm going to make some comments on Apollo TD saying, I think if their by-election never happened, Starmer would still be removed in May after locals. This is just an kicking for Starmer and Labour and a big gift to the Greens. And he's just like, but this by-election, all right, which arguably could be fair, which Starmer is like, let's see, this, as Josh says, this Scummon is saying, 90 Scummon saying, this loss has just cemented Andy's position as the figure to replace him, which Okay, okay, Frank, you're back. Is that you feeling better now?
Yeah, I hope everything's working now.
Yeah. So you were saying about the Tories?
I was saying about the Tories that I don't think they're a major political and it's proved in this where Gorton and Denton is a progressive seat, but I think this is just worse than one scenario for them.
Okay. Out of curiosity, do you have a stuttering problem, by any chance, or?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so it's still cutting out a little bit, but
Oh dear.
let's see. I guess we're gonna have to live with it for the time being. This Paul TD, this loss has cemented any position as a figure to replace him, and the Paul TD say, "Yep, and Annie Burnham, any the big winners here. Wesley, the biggest loser." But yeah, but arguably, regardless of how this by-election was going to play down, Keir Starmer was probably likely going to be gone, as Apollo TD said here. But this by-election may have had one saving grace of saving him if he could hold it on, perhaps convincing, I don't know, the POP saying he might lose locals, but at the very least, he can still win general elections. But now that that's not no longer the case, it looks like, okay, come the locals, yeah, he is definitely screwed now.
Oh, 100%. They're
Yeah,
certainly going to try and remove him once the elections have been and gone. Local
yeah,
elections.
yeah. Anyway, Skullman is saying, Frank, you're a bit quiet and cutting out a little. So, yeah, that seems to be the problem at the moment.
Oh, right. Okay. I think I shall leave once more. I'm going to watch what's going back on your YouTube live feed and I'm going to try and see what needs to be fixed.
Okay, fair enough. Let's see. We'll keep doing some my own commentary as we discuss this. So, yeah, but yeah. So, granted, there's a few other parties that, of course, ran in this by-election. I think the more full results are down here. Let's see. Just see the results. So, but yeah, you had, of course, the Greens, Matt Goodwin, turned second place, and just see a girl. So the Conservatives came out with someone called Charlotte Caden, and he got 706 votes with a 1.9. Let's see. Okay, he was Scottman saying you sound better now. It's a bit too late for that comment, but let's see. But let's see. Anyway, moving back on. Then there was, of course, in fifth place, the Liberal Democrats with 653. Let's see, with 1.8% minus 200. So let's see, no surprise there. But granted, it seems like the Greens took that extra 2% from Labour at the very least, from what we can tell. And then in sixth place was the Monster Raving Loony Party, the Sink Oink a Lot, the most famous of our sort of a fringe, ritzy protest parties, if you will. Advance UK, I believe the new far-right political ritzy party led by Bin Habe. Am I thinking of the other guy? I don't know, was it Restore UK or something? Yeah. He got 154 votes, 0.4. Rejoin the EU got someone called Joseph McClare, got 98 votes. That's apparently Nick Buckley, who I think was as ritzy. Okay. And then you got like the Libertarian candidate, Dan Clark, with 47 votes, 0.1%. The SPD had Sebastian Moore, 46, also 0.1% of vote. And the Communist League, Hugo Wills, 29 and 0.1% of the vote, which, let's see, Frank saying something's up. That's not me. I'm sure this is going to work tonight. Not sure this is going to work tonight. I'll let you take it from here, John. Okay, then, okay, I'll try and do as much best commentary as I can by myself, but, if anyone that wants to join to help me out, that's you're more than welcome, but yeah. So, yeah, these are sort of like, the by-election results. Let's see, the majority was, of course, 4,420, which is a majority of 12% of the vote share. Turnout was 36,904 with 4.7.6 minus 2. there were rejected ballots of 90, which is 0.2. And there's like registered electorates of 77,501, which, of course, Green gained from Labour with a swing of 26.4%. Arguably, this is a historic day for the Greens, as this is their first ever by-election victory. So, yeah, the Greens have managed to win their first ever by-election. This is like, it's never happened in their history. They've always come in like fourth, fifth, maybe sixth or something. But let's see, under Sack Polanski, they've had their first victory, if you will. A comment from Skullman saying the Communist League are an awful party. They're like the one pro-Israel commie party in existence. Ah, yes, they are arguably, from my understanding, an infiltrator party that tries to like bring communism to Labour, which good luck getting even basic social democracy in Labour, at least while Keir Starmer's in charge. So, yeah, let's see. This is not going to be like, yeah, it's basically one of those fringe parties that should probably find other priorities of trying to take over the Labour Party, if you will. But yeah. Anyway, yeah, the Greens have won their first by-election victory. Let's see. Oh, so John, that's a different party, John. The AOL, I believe. Okay, my mistake. My bad there. I'm getting all these fringe parties mixed up. But yeah. But nevertheless, a communist party that seems to be pro-Israel doesn't really seem to compute, especially when you think about most ritzy people on the ideology of the left. But yeah. Anyway, let's see. This is a huge victory for the Greens, as not only is this like their first by-election win, this probably confirms that Sack Polanski's leadership of the Greens is likely to stay on, at the very least, into like the next general election. Let's see, as Skullman is pointing here, big moment for the Greens. Will break the floodgates on what they can achieve now. Arguably, yes, because if the Greens can win here, this means that they have a chance of winning. Well, technically not everywhere, but basically anywhere where Labour is like struggling. Because from my understanding, this was Labour's 39th safest seat as a result. Let's see, but now that the seat has been basically lost, you're basically going. Let's see, this means that any of the seats below it could be in danger of being like taken by another party. Now, granted, I doubt that Labour's going to lose all the seats underneath of them unless they have a very, very bad election, like a 1931 style wipeout. But yeah, those seats are in danger now, and those MPs are going to consider that, and whether or not how long they're going to keep Keir Starmer about. Where Skullman here has shown that there are viable left-wing alternatives that can beat Labour and Reform. Arguably, yes, that is the case. Now, the Greens have probably solidified themselves as the alternative party in the left, as the SNP have, let's see, for like since 2015, identified them as the alternative party from like Labour and the Tories in Scotland. Plaid Cymru is likely to do that in Wales come next, the next Senedd elections. And now you have Green. Granted, they could also have the Lib Dems for like the seats that that the Greens can't win. Of course, that depends if Ed Davey starts to make some moves and all that stuff. With Apollo DD, of course, commenting about the Greens supplementing the Lib Dems at the moment, and questions for them and the Davey is to do they tack left or stay near Liberal, which arguably yes, because arguably the Lib Dems need to have a sort of response to this, because the Greens at the moment are gaining the attention which normally the Lib Dems would do as the alternative to the two main parties. So either they stay on course or, let's see, Ed Davey gets replaced. Now, granted, from my understanding, usually Lib Dems, granted this was before, I guess, the coalition years, normally they give their leaders at least 2 elections to try and, let's see, give their party, let's see, chances of electoral victory. But afterwards, let's see, most of the leaders have only really had one election, but that's mostly due to the fringe years where they were like down to like, let's see, less than even, let's see, barely getting double digits or even just single digit seats, if you will, after their wipeout in 2015. Granted, Ed Davey has gotten their best result for not only for like this party's entire history, but the best result for any Liberal Party since, I believe, was it 1921 election? Or was it 1923? I think it was 1923, actually, yeah. With Sculman saying this seat, I think, was Green's 130th target seat or something, and that level, which is crazy. Arguably, yes, which means, could this mean that the Greens could get 130 seats next election? With Sculman saying the Lib Dems are 11th, trying to ride the middle of the road. And as Nye said, we know what happens to people who stand in the middle of the road. They get run down. Arguably, yes. The political center is no longer the appeal that it used to be in the 90s, or even early 2000s, if you will. With a Poltical D saying Blair, Cameron, Wilson, McMillan never got run down from the middle, which arguably, yes, though. I'd probably say Wilson, McMillan are probably more, let's see, probably have better legacies than Blair and Cameron at the moment, I would say. Given, let's see, Blair has Iraq and Cameron's got, well, Brexit running it down from his, but who knows? But that's just what I am just commenting on. Let's see, but yeah, the Greens. Let's see, Scarman saying Wilson McMillan were not centrists, so we might have a bit of an ideological battle between, let's see, Josh and Paul TD about, let's see, which politician was what, but yeah, the Greens done well. They've now got 5 MPs in Parliament. Let's see, Sculman has said that this was their 130th target. It probably means that they could probably end up gaining more, if you will. Now, granted, how many seats the Greens can win remains to be seen. Granted, at the very least, they'll do. This gives them a clear shot of winning in the more metropolitan city areas, at the very least. So places like Manchester and London could very well get a fair share of Green MPs coming the next general election, possibly. And let's see, what other what other towns and cities would Leeds and Liverpool count? I'm not sure. Maybe Cambridge. I don't know. Well, granted, Cambridge might be more. No, Cambridge would probably be more Plaid Cymru, I guess. But yeah. But yeah, Greens are basically on having a very good night. Zach, let's see. And Sculman says, I don't think it guarantees they win 130 seats, but it's now a possibility. Yes. Let's see. The fact that this is now considered a possibility will lead to many people considering to vote Green. Now, granted, now, let's see, Liverpool is more your party ground. Arguably, yes, which, who knows, could very well happen, I guess. But I guess it depends if your party can get self-sorted. I mean, they've now selected Corbyn as its the official leader, at least leader in the parliament, if you will. So we'll have to wait and see how Zara Satana and I guess the other independent MPs react to that. But at the very least, but at the moment, for now, the momentum is with the Greens, and it comes to the left. They are likely to win. Let's see, many new seats now, be it by-elections or local elections, and maybe even general elections. We have to wait and see. Of course, we have to wait, and let's say a week is a long time in politics. We also have to consider who ends up replacing Starmer if he is replaced next general election, which I suppose gets to Labour now. Which let's see, as we do have some sort of reactions to the Labour Party, as I think apparently Starmer accepts voters are impatient for change as Greens celebrate some dramatic by-election wins. So let's see. let's see, Starmer seems to now have no choice but to admit that he's done some mistakes. But given what I've seen on him on Twitter, it seems like he's more of like just doubled down on. Let's see, doubled down on basically what. Let's see, basically done what like he has always done with Labour and all that stuff. And from my understanding, a lot of MPs are not happy, but of course they're not making any moves. But I think Starmer, if he hoped this by-election had any chance of saving his premiership, it's not going to end up being the case. And oh yeah, as Josh was talking, Labour machine were full in cope, and now they're turning on each other again. Yeah. Arguably, a few weeks ago, they looked like we're tearing each other apart over like the stuff with Mandelson coming out. And let's see, it seems like the cabinet at least got behind Starmer back when there was some, let's see, like the Scottish leader called for him to resign. So it seemed like it's sort of calmed down again, but this by-election has triggered that. And Rayner's made some comments. Andy Burnham's made some comments. And I think more calls for him to go, but I doubt he won't leave out before May, which I agree. And as I think Apollo, let's see, TD is here saying Andy Burnham, Rayner are the big winners here, and Wesley's the biggest loser, arguably, which I probably have to agree because, well, let's see, West Streeting, which I assume is probably Wesley, is, even though this by-election arguably is not his fault, it's still his faction of the party that led this, and it's not going to do him any favors. Andy Burnham is, let's see, validated because it's very likely that if Labour had put Andy Burnham in the seat, he would likely end up of winning it for Labour. And even though this might have caused Starmer worry about having like his potential rival to replace him, at the very least, if he kept the by-election seat, it might have at the very least not caused him problems in at least the short term, at the very least, rather than the long-term problems. And Angela Rayner, as I think, made some comments as this gives more shitsy of saying that Labour needs to like change and let's see, question and all that stuff. This will probably flood more people to try and support her as the next deputy leader, provided Andy Burnham can't get into Parliament. Which, let's see, has Andy commented on the by-election? I'm just going to quickly Google search and see what I got. Andy Burnham. Let's see, top stories. At the moment, I am not seeing anything. I'm going to quickly search Twitter. I'm going to search Twitter. And see if he's made any comments. Andy Burnham. Let's see. As far as I can tell, he has not really tweeted anything. Let's see. No, I do not see that. As far as I can tell, I have not seen him tweet anything. So he hasn't put any comments on that at the very least. So let's see. At the moment, there's a bunch of articles talking about what's next for Andy Burnham or if he could have won the by-election. So, yeah. Let's see. So, at the moment, no comment from Andy Burnham as far as I'm aware of, with Skoman saying Keir would have been screwed either way. Let Andy stand out and get toppled by him, block him and get toppled later in May. So, yeah, if anything, he's just probably more emboldened his critics against him, especially now that a by-election they could have won with him, they haven't, and as a result, yeah, that you have this now. So, yeah. Anyway, I suppose now that this has, let's see, gone out of the way, we've basically mentioned, I guess, what I can think of with Keir Starmer at the moment. I suppose the ideal thing now is to possibly talk about, I guess, Reform UK, I guess, and let's see how they're going to respond. At the moment, they're basically, as you expect from Nigel Farage, any Farage's party after they lose a by-election, they have basically been complaining about, let's see, the election being somewhat wigged, or like certain voters not voting in droves against them, from my understanding. As let me just quickly search for Farage. As Farage has been doing the making claims of cheating by family voting concerns raised in, of course, Gorton and Denton, which for those who do not, we've got a comment from Frank Indigo saying Starmer is an arrogant. Well, I'm not going to say the word, but you can't put the party first, not the country, just himself. Arguably, yes. The more Starmer stays, the more he looks like an elite that's just out for his own himself. But anyway, for those who do not know, there have been allegations that in particular in the Muslim community, that family members, particularly male Muslims, have been telling their partners or their wives, if you will, to vote Green, even though that wasn't really what they were going to do. We're seeing with Frank saying, really disappointing, but I'm not surprised, sadly. I joined to elect his inevitable successor. But, okay, so you wish to vote for possibly maybe Rayner, I guess, Ed Miliband or Burnham, if you could possibly get to get in. But yeah. There's been accusations that male Muslims have been telling their female Muslim partners or wives to with Frank saying, I joined back in 2019 to vote against him. Okay, fair enough. Same year I joined Labour, but yeah, still, ironically enough, still a member. But anyway, so male members, telling the female family members to vote, Greens, when they might have not wanted to vote that way. So you've got these accusations. As a result, people are accusing that the Greens only won because of these types of voters. Now, I don't know how true this statement is, and how much it actually impacted, but I don't know if this is necessarily something that can force a recount or another election at the very least, because you can have probably people telling you how to vote or not, but I guess if there was extreme enforced, maybe, I'm not really sure. Frank Indigo saying no savage, misogynistic, homophobic Muslim voting for the white English woman in a party led by. Oh, and we've got Tom. Tom has joined us.
Hello. I have joined indeed, yes.
Yeah, some good timing, as I was just running out of things to say by myself, I will admit. We had Frank on here for a little bit, and unfortunately he's had some audio problems, so he left. And but yeah. And as Scarman saying, probably Asian males making their wives vote Labour, but yeah. So
oh dear.
But yes, as you can probably tell, I've been a bit of going a bit of topic, talking about the build-up of the by-election, talking what it means for the Greens, talking what it means for Labour, and I'm just getting to talking about reform and about the sort of allegations. But I assume you probably want to have so you probably have a lot to say on each of the topics. I suppose, Tom, we should ask, what are your thoughts on the results so far?
Right, okay, so we'll start with that first then. So my thoughts on the results are basically, I think it's very good. I think it's probably the best case scenario that I could have envisioned that was realistic anyway. Greens winning and winning comfortably, Reform ending up in second, and Labour ending up in a pretty distant third. That was the ideal outcome, and that is what happened. I would have liked for Labour to be more further down, lose an extra 10%, half of that going to Reform and the other half going to the Greens. But ultimately, that is just a little bit, it still ultimately results in the same thing, which is Labour was completely crushed. And the Greens ended up winning, and that is a very good result, I would say.
I mean, many people in the bullet chat were thinking that it was going to be a tight race of maybe 2 points between, like Green's on 33, Reform on 30, 32 or something. But this arguably succeeded everyone's expectations, from my understanding.
Oh yeah, definitely did. I didn't think it was going to be particularly close in terms of it being completely freeway, but I did think it would be close for the Greens and Reform. I thought that it would be about a 3% difference between Greens and Reform. So pretty much what the vote share difference is here between Labour and Reform, that's what I thought it was going to be for Reform and the Greens.
Okay.
Where both basically I thought that the end result was going to be the Greens would be on 33% and Reform would be on 30% is what I envisioned it happening as, and then Labour was in 26 is how I envisioned it being. And I more or less got Reform and Labour correct, 1 point off, but that's or whatever. But I greatly underestimated how much support the Greens would get in the end.
Oh yeah, fair enough. And yeah, I do know that. Let's see, the Labour was trying. I mentioned this earlier in the stream, but I remember Labour was trying everything in their power to try and prevent Greens from winning because of how it would affect them. Even doing like fake leaflets, I believe. Let's see, saying that this poller says that we're the only ones that can beat Reform, basically doing a Lib Dem tactic.
Oh yeah, Labour had two campaigns during this election, in my opinion. The first campaign was obviously their own, but the second campaign was basically de facto reform, because it's pretty clear that they were moved heaven and earth to try and get reform to win if they couldn't win, because the Greens winning was the ultimate nightmare scenario for the Labour Party, because the reason why it was the ultimate nightmare scenario for them is because it meant that progressive voters now had an alternative to vote for. The Labour Party, for the very longest time, had effectively emotionally blackmailed left wing voters into voting for them because they were the only way of stopping the right wing. And now that argument doesn't really work anymore now that the Greens have won a super safe Labour seat by a very comfortable margin and put the Labour Party into third place.
Oh yeah,
The
Scarman.
Green,
Sorry, I
go
just say Scarman basically saying Labour would prefer to lose to Reform than let the Greens win, in a similar manner to how people would have let's see, probably would have like how Labour would rather lose to the Tories than let Corbyn be Prime Minister. But yeah, go on.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I'd agree with that, and that's what I was saying. Basically, that they would have rather Reform won than the Greens. That was their ideal outcome.
Oh yeah, but Labour's basically this has basically been their thing for a long time. I mean, there was a period of time when the Lib Dems seemed like an option, but after they went into coalition with the Tories, that let's see basically killed off that chance. So it was back to let's see Labour. Now, granted, in Scotland, the SNP became an alternative for the Scottish, but that ended up let's see being of only one section. It also kind of became a problem for Labour because people thought without Scotland they couldn't win, which made it difficult when the Labour actually got a left winger in with Corbyn. But now, not only is the Greens shown to be alternative, but Scotland, you got the SNP back, and also now in Wales, Plaid Cymru is the alternative. So no matter you go in the UK, there's at least one alternative that maybe could lead to some sort of coalition down the line. I'm not sure of at least anti-Tory / anti-reform parties at the very least. But at the very least, there are some alternatives, and now Labour now have to deal with what the Tories had to deal with in the 2024 election of being attacked left, right, and centre, if you will. So we've got that. With some comments from like Poltical saying, Frank, would you vote later in the Labour leadership election? Which is arguably what I'd probably do as well, to be fair. As he said, probably I'd vote for Burnham if he somehow ends up in the ballot. Yeah. If Burnham's on, I'd vote. If Rayner, that would be my second choice. with she's saying she's only half viable candidate at the moment. Dretzy Scarman saying Lib Dems under Kennedy was the only time. Plaid is on the up. Real possibility of 2029 will be our 2015. Arguably, yes.
Everybody in the comments is saying that they'd vote for Rayner or Burner, but what about Mike Tapp or John Hinder? What about those two Dream Team people?
I think that most of them might not be known enough, as I don't quite know enough about them myself, Tom. I will admit.
Also, the joke doesn't really work then, but basically the joke is that Mike Tapp and John Hinder are two of the most right-wing Labour MPs by far, and the two people that are the most likely to defect to reform, if any active Labour MPs defect to
Oh yeah, I
reform.
think I remember you talking that in like one of the previous streams. Sorry.
It's mainly basically because of the immigration stances, like both of them are super anti-immigration, and it's very likely if, for example, Shabana Mahmood's immigration reforms were scrapped, that those two would probably defect to reform, especially if that happened and then Andrew Rayner became PM and started liberalising immigration laws. If that happens, those two would defect to reform. That was basically what the joke was supposed to be.
Okay, fair enough. Reform. Let's see. Reform defectors leading Labour. Okay, but yeah. No, granted, who knows? I wouldn't be surprised if they do, which would probably get me in Reform has like what 10 MPs or something now. But I don't know. That would probably still be a blow to Labour, but arguably one that might not be a lot too much of a loss long term for them at least. Let's see.
It wouldn't be a loss for them long
Yeah.
at all because
Yeah.
they're terrible MPs.
Yeah. Apollo TD says, I Carnes for PM. Carnes is a shout. Carnes was generated in a lab 2 months ago. Okay. Oh, yeah. I think I might know which one that one is, even vaguely.
He's the military guy.
Okay.
It's a similar sort of person to Dan Jarvis, I'd say.
Fair enough. But yeah. Anyway, I suppose, Tom, I should probably ask you, well, granted, you probably already gave some of your piece. What do you think this will impact on the Greens at the very least? This by-election.
I'd say that the impact on the Greens is extremely positive because, yeah, as mentioned earlier, this now gives them the ability to make the argument that they are the progressive option to go for to stop reform from winning. So if you're a left-wing voter that doesn't like reform, then you can vote for the Greens tactically to stop reform from winning, whilst also not having to hold your nose and vote for the Labour Party, who are just awful. So that gives them a huge amount of strength and a big boost in a lot of their target seats, in particular metropolitan city target seats in Manchester, Bristol, Brighton, Newcastle, London, and other places in the country that are major metro areas.
Oh yeah, I think I mentioned London. The other parts I didn't know, which it's a good thing you're here as you're the more informative of the two. I did wonder if Liverpool might, but I think Skullman suggested that might be more your party territory if they get their, I guess their stuff sorted out. But yeah, let's see. Anyway, let's see.
Party territory. If they ever figure out what they're doing.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I think that East London in particular is an area where the Greens would do extremely well. West London is a bit more well off and wealthier, and so it's more likely to be Tory and Labour. But East London is pretty fertile ground for the Greens. Seats like Tottenham, Tower Hamlets, Barking, Dagenham, places like that would be very good territory for the Green Party. And it's also an extremely big boon for them in the local elections, because a lot of the areas in the local elections that are coming up are metropolitan areas. So this is a huge boost for their local elections campaign, and they can point to it as proof that you don't need to worry about voting for them because it could be a wasted vote that allows reform to come in because they can now present themselves as the effective challengers, Reform Party to the left.
Okay. Yeah, arguably. Yeah. But who knows? It'd be funny to see David Lammy unseated by the Greens. But yeah, anyway. A few comments first. One, Don Jarvis Low. No need to remind me of that. One timed out. Apologies saying Carnes being a former special boot service commander is like real life action man as an MP Low. Okay, fair enough. Anyway, at the very least, one other thing I would probably say for the Greens, Zach Polanski's position as leader of the Green Party is probably secured for at least the next general election, at the very least. Let's see.
Yeah. Very much so. He is pretty secure in his position now, from now until the election happens, unless there is some staggering reversal of fortunes, but I don't see that happening.
Yeah.
He himself has said that if he was to go and campaign in a by-election, he will go for a London seat. So if there is a seat in a London constituency, he would go for it. And uh, it would depend upon the London seat, for example. But if it's an East London seat or Central London seat, I think he would win it very, very easily. Um, if it was someone like Tower Hamlets or uh, Barking, Islington South, um, he could easily win somewhere like.
Oh, yeah. Be funny to be, hey, Jeremy Corbyn, I'm your MP neighbour now. But yeah. But yeah. But
More
yeah.
or less kindred spirits, so it would be
Yeah.
a pretty easy cooperation.
Yeah. Now, let's see. Granted, I'm curious to see if the Greens will, let's see, maybe cancel their next 2-year leadership election because they do leadership elections every 2 years, right?
They do, but they won't cancel that. But it will just be a coronation, effectively, for Polanski because he'll win it easily.
Yeah, I would be curious to see if anyone would actually want to stand up against him or not. But who knows? At the very least, he sort of secured the kit motion of the Greens probably do better with a singular leader. At the very least, which
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
this has probably been the most successful they've been since Caroline Lucas was leader, and she was their sole leader at one point.
Uh-huh. But yeah, let's see if Frank saying, are there really no other seats in Manchester or the North in general that you could go for? A lot of Greens attack on reform in the campaign because Goodwin isn't local. Sounds bad, typical. Let's see. I'll probably go for, like, I suppose that could lead in the next bit. What? Sorry, go on.
The reason why he wants to go for a London seat is not because of parachuting or anything like that. The reason he gave for it is basically because London is his permanent residency. That's where he lives, and he's lived in London for the past 20 years.
Yeah.
So his roots are firmly planted in London, even though he was born and raised in Manchester.
Yeah.
So he wants to be an MP for an area he's been more connected to than to go for his birthplace. That's
Oh,
the
yeah.
reason that he gave as to why he would only go for a London seat.
Yeah. See, fair enough. Even though some might say, oh, another London leader thing, but I think Polanski has shown himself to be far different than the current London leader, and even the last London Tory PM. But yeah. Anyway, I suppose we can now move on to the topic. What do you think this means for Labour at the moment?
Well, before we do what it means for Labour, I think the thing with the Greens, though, and why they can get away with that is because the Greens have never really had that sort of working class history and base, nor that sort of connection to the north of England and the post-industrial um, era that happened, as well as being connected to heavy industry and mining and all that. Green Party doesn't have that same connection that Labour does, so it doesn't really matter that they're a London leader, unlike with Labour, where it is kind of a concern. So they can get away with that more than Labour can. As
Yeah.
for what this means for the Labour Party, well, to be honest, it's about as catastrophic as it possibly can be. Like, this was the Labour Party's nightmare. this is the very scenario that they worked super hard to avoid happening. They did everything in their power to make sure that this could not happen, and yet it did anyway. It's a catastrophe for them on so many different levels. The first and most obvious one is it's yet another massive high profile election defeat and being added on to another previous high profile election defeats, such as Caerphilly, Runcorn, and last year's locals. So that's already bad in of itself. The second, more obvious reason is they have lost their 50, I mean, not 50, 35th safest seat in the country, a seat which has been Labour since the 1930s and has never been anything else but Labour for the
Oh yeah,
19.
my understanding they won it in 1931, which was like their original disaster election.
Yeah, not only did they win it in 31, but they won it comfortably in 31 as well. So I think looking at all the elections, I could be wrong about it, but from what graph I saw earlier today, I think that Labour always won a majority of the votes in that constituency. They always got over 50%. Manchester Gorton, as it used to be called before it became Gorton and Denton, is one of those constituencies where they used to weigh the votes rather than count the votes because Labour used to win so overwhelming. And now they've not only lost big, but they've come third in the seat. It is catastrophic, to be honest. And in addition to that, the main core argument that Labour can used to use in the past for getting people to vote for them is, well, if you are left wing, you have to vote for us because if you don't, the evil, nasty Tories will get in. So vote Labour or get Tory. That was their whole argument for the longest time. This by-election has ended that argument for good. They can no longer make that argument now because people can simply point to the Green Party as being an effective progressive alternative that is actually left-wing as a challenge to reform and the right. So one of their core arguments has now been lost. And that is going to be extremely damaging because it means that a lot of left wing and progressive voters who are extremely unhappy with the current direction that Labour has taken, but don't want to not vote for them because they risk reform getting in, can now more easily vote for the Green Party and abandon Labour because they know that the Greens now have a real chance of winning over reform. It's disastrous for them. It is the absolute worst case scenario, and it just could not have gone worse for them if they tried.
Ah, okay, fair enough. Interesting little trivia I've just seen here from looking at the Wikipedia page of like Manchester Gorton. There was actually supposed to be a by-election to be called back in 2017, but it was cancelled due to like the snap election.
Oh yeah, I remember that happened. Gerald Crowthman, yeah, that was his name. Gerald Crowthman was the MP for Manchester Gorton. He was there
Yeah,
for a
yeah.
very long time.
Oh yeah, he
Uh,
joined. He became an MP the same year Corbyn did.
oh right, yeah, I thought so. I think he was friends with Corbyn and worked with him a lot. I think he might have been Socialist Campaign Group as well.
Yeah,
So he was very respected and very popular within Manchester Gorton. And so when he died, it was a very big shock to the constituency, and there was going to be a by-election, but then it got merged into the 2017 election. Um, I also remember it being another one of those sort of by-election tests when it happened. There was all sorts of talk at the time of, oh, is Labour going to lose this one as well because of Corbyn being the worst leader ever? And that never came to fruition at the end. They
yeah,
won it in 2017. They won it comfortably in 2017.
yeah. So, yeah. arguably they probably would have done very well in this seat. And I mean, just learning about this guy you mentioned, Gerd Government. Oh, he was a Polish Jewish family. Interesting. Well,
Yeah.
granted, that one, if he was alive, he'd probably have to deal with the anti-Semitism scandals from given the fact he's got an entire section of his Wikipedia page criticizing Israel, if you will. But let's see, but yeah, but that is then. This is, I guess, now, but yeah. So arguably, with like this done, interesting. I have heard there was some talks I heard that if Labour kept the seat somehow, which was never going to happen, this could have given Starmer a case of saying, okay, I might lose in the local elections and all that stuff, but I can still win in a general election, or at least, the main election, the one that counts, if you will. I don't think that he can use that now.
Oh, definitely not.
Yeah.
No, I mean, the original hope and one of the hopes that Labour had is that if they won Gorton, then they could use it as a sort of life raft for Starmer's premiership to keep him afloat until at least the end of the year. But they cannot use that anymore because they lost decisively and comfortably and came third behind
Oh, yeah.
Reform and Greens.
And if anything, it'll probably more embolden the critics, especially now that we've got okay, they're going to do bad in the locals. So, yeah. And quite a fair share of MPs made themselves look like fools trying to say, oh, no, we can win the seat. Oh, no, it's between Labour and Reform. Labour and Reform. Yeah. So I suppose they were hoping that if they at least came second, they could make the case that, okay, see, this is what happens when you vote Green. You get Reform. Now, granted, I always found that tactic risky because if it turned out Reform wins, but Green came in a close second, people could have, people could have stood and gone, like, you know what, we should have voted Green instead. And you probably would just get more people voting Greens as a result. But of course, this result definitely guarantees Labour sort of gaining the seat. So yeah, arguably this would probably mean that Angela Rayner, or I guess some other left-winger candidate, but at the moment I'd probably say Rayner unless Burnham gets in, is more likely to, be able to replace Starmer's leader because it's like, see, this is what happens when we go too right-wing. We lose votes to the left. We're now losing votes to Green. We need to move back to the left, or at least somewhere in the soft left at the very least, where it looks like we're somewhat of a progressive party. So yeah, I think the Labour rights case of Kearty being in charge is looking more and more dire as time goes on. But
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, the way that Labour as a party conducted itself throughout this whole election was nothing short of disgraceful. Dirty tactics, um, manipulation, lots of legal grey areas, um, and all kinds of really, really bad things. And
Yeah.
you also had a lot of MPs completely debase themselves for no good reason or justification at all. Like you had people like Lucy Powell that were insisting up until the polls closed that they were going to win it easily. So she looks like a complete and utter idiot now with her constant, yeah, we'll definitely win this nonsense, which was just never believable from the very start.
I wonder if
Um,
we need to replace the deputy leader again.
Oh God, I mean, but yeah, she debased herself for nothing. And you had a whole bunch of MPs from the Socialist Campaign Group that also decided to tie themselves to this, which now look like idiots as well. People like Rebecca Long Bailey, as an example, who went and campaigned in Gorton on the very day, even though it was decisive loss. Um, yeah, I mean, Labour was just disastrous and conducted themselves terribly throughout this whole election. And the
Fair enough.
reaction to it has somehow been even worse. Um, Labour's reaction to this by-election has basically been the political equivalent of an ostrich sticking its head into the sand and just being in total denial of what has happened. Starmer gave a little speech where he gave the usual generic answer that every government does when they lose a by-election. Midterm blues, it's always a struggle. Governments always lose by-elections, blah, 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 all that nonsense. But in addition to that, he also basically said that the Greens and Reform are all extremists and that this is basically extremism being rewarded and
Uh,
sectarianism being
yeah,
rewarded.
you
And
know,
he,
I
yeah,
suppose if you, sorry, I'll just quickly comment. I suppose if it was like, okay, you lost to like Tories and the Lib Dems, okay, you can make a case for that, but you lost to like a third party that's never won a by-election before. But anyway, go on.
yeah, so he said that, and then he basically ended off his speech by saying, "Oh, we don't need to change course. Eventually, with time, all our wonderful policies will lead to an economic boom, and then everybody will love us again." Essentially, his whole message was, "Don't care. We're going to continue business as usual, and if you don't like it, here's a middle finger." That was essentially their attitude towards the voters
Oh yeah,
and public.
yeah.
And
Go on.
I think the remarkable thing about that way of thinking is that they don't seem to understand that when you take that attitude towards the public, when you have that patronizing, contemptuous, arrogant attitude, it just makes people want to reflectively vote against you for anybody else apart from you, no matter what they're like. Like, this is what happened to the Tories in their final days at the last government. People began to hate them so much because of their arrogance and their patronizing behavior and their contempt for everybody that people were just willing to vote for literally anybody who had the best chance of getting them out, no matter who it was. And Labour is slowly heading that way with the attitude that they are taking at the moment, where no
Right.
matter how many times they lose an election, no matter how badly they lose an election, they just never change. And so people just hate them and they want to vote against them even more.
Oh yeah, because I still remember like let's see, and the S&P lost big. They had a bit of a self-reflection, and now they got a chance of becoming like let's see, keep let's see winning their MPs back as well as continue to win the Senate elections. I think to some extent you did have Labour reflect back after the locals and Euro elections in 2019. Though granted, that was probably for the more worst take, really. But yeah, but you still had some takes. Oh yeah, I think earlier Apollo TD said that the dirtiest taxes election were from Labour and the Greens, both dodgy bar charts. Greens used quotes from politic professors they didn't say, and Labour said the Greens couldn't win, which arguably what you said. Though I don't really know much about the Green quotes that they do, but I
Yeah,
suppose
I didn't hear about that, so I don't know if they did that.
so. Yeah, but one thing I will admit, but yeah, arguably Starmer is basically doubled down, which either will just make, like you said, make voters pissed, but probably also make the MPs that see want him gone more pissed, and arguably, yeah, he'll probably be gone by May. It's just only who replaces him, which at the moment looks to be like Rayner, unless Burnham Sargon gets in. But yeah, but the one party I'm curious is what you think is going to change is basically reform, because well, let's see, they sort of like let's see reform sort of like picked let's see Matt Goodwin, the political commentator or analyst who became more right wing and more populist just to sell a bunch of books and all that stuff. Let's see, and as a result he was ended up being chosen and he lost, and they have basically done the standard Nigel Farage party loss reaction of like oh, this about this, they've lost because these voters did this or that, usually like Muslim voters voting out against them, and they've been doing accusations of apparently male family members pressuring female family members to vote for like the Greens or something. That's my understanding, right?
Oh yeah, the whole family voting. Yeah, I heard about that. Um, I don't know how widespread it is, so I won't really comment on it. But there were accusations that it did happen. Um, Family voting, in case people don't know, and I only found out what it was yesterday, is basically the action where two people of the same family will go into a ballot booth and will collude or be influenced to vote the same way as each other. So the way it typically works is a husband and wife will go into the same ballot booth as each other, and the husband will pressure the wife to vote for the same party that they're voting for. And the reason it's considered illegal conduct under the Electoral Commission is because it goes against the principle of the secret ballot. Um,
Yeah.
that's and there were accusations that that was done at quite a large scale in this by-election. Um, Reforms reported it to the police and electoral commission, so we'll see what their investigation says about this. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's by-elections always. This by-election's been definitely a legal um, minefield because it's just been so many different legal cases filed against different parties. Labour, Greens, Reform all got legal cases filed against them, and
Ah,
there was a lot of manipulation of electoral material that could be a legal grey area.
okay. So could this mean that this by-election could be triggered again and all that stuff?
Very unlikely. I don't believe that the accusations of family voting were widespread enough to lead the by-election to be null and void. Um, it's exceedingly rare that any election in this country is null and voided as a result of electoral fraud, basically, which is what family voting would be classed as.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
the
So,
only examples I can think of were Tower Hamlets elections at the local level and some Birmingham elections as well, but it very rarely happens, so I
uh,
doubt it. Doubt it
okay.
strongly.
Fair enough. I mean, could from my understanding, so you say two family members at the same time going into one ballot thing, which is that even allowed? I thought it was like you're only allowed one person in the ballot box, tick their vote, and then put their vote in and all that stuff. Isn't that how it works?
Yeah, that's how family voting works, and yeah, it's not allowed. Like, it's not allowed. You, you're not supposed to have two people of the same family or two people in general go into the same ballot booth and vote. Um,
Yeah,
so yes, it's not allowed. That's
because
why it's considered to be electoral fraud by the Electoral Commission, because that's what it
yeah,
is.
yeah, because I do remember the one time I went to a ballot box because my mum Etsy helped me arrange it to post a vote afterwards. That let's see. I was in the box. I was in the booth. I ticked with the parties I wanted for general election and local election because this is 2015 at the time. Which, in hindsight, I wish I voted differently from how I did. But oh well, that is the past. Let's see. But yeah. But so yeah, I was by myself. No one intervened and all that stuff. The only thing I could say is maybe just before they enter the ballot box, they say you're going to vote this way. 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 Let's see which arguably maybe not the most morally thing to do, but it's still, I guess, it's not technically illegal if that was the case. If you were trying to persuade them to do just before entering the ballot boxes, I guess.
I don't believe it is, I mean, I'll give an example to explain what it is because I've looked into some examples of it. But here's how it usually goes: a husband and a wife will go to a polling station in order to vote. The husband wants to vote for Labour. The wife wants to vote for Reform. The two have an argument over this. They go into the polling station. They get their ballot paper. They then both go in the same booth. The husband will then go to the wife, "You are going to vote Labour, whether you like it or not, so do it." And the wife, feeling pressured, votes Labour, even though they want to vote Reform. So they put
Okay.
the cross next to the Labour box, and husband does. They both cast their ballots and they both leave. That's what family voting is. That's how
Ah,
it works. And
Okay,
that's why, and it's considered again, it's considered electoral fraud for that very reason.
let's see. All right, fair enough. So, how would it go if they're both, let's see, heading to like the voting station? One's trying to persuade the other to vote for this party or not, and then when they get to the thing, they're in separate ballot boxes, and then they end up deciding their own vote. That would not count, despite previous talks of trying to influence each other for voting for a different party. Correct?
Yeah, that wouldn't count because there's no overt coercion that's going on. There may be pressure, but if it doesn't happen in the ballot in the polling station, it is fine by and large. It's bad when it's in the same ballot because the husband can observe and correct and pressure to make sure the right choice is being made. With the pressuring and coercion thing, you can say that you can be pressured to voting a certain way, but if they're not in the same ballot, you can vote however you want, and then you can say, I voted the way you told me to, even though you never did.
Ah, yeah, fair enough. So it's
The
like, yeah,
way the reason it's fine when they're in separate ballots is because booths is because there's no way of knowing which way a person voted because it's secret. But with the family voting, when they're both in the same booth, there isn't a way to confirm that secret ballot.
okay. So there may be some cases of that happening, but for all we know, it could be more cases of what I was suggesting, basically. But yeah,
Yeah, could be.
yeah, yeah. So anyway, Josh, Skullman is saying the polling station was empty when I voted in 2024. I was the only person there when I went in. Pretty much the same experience when I voted in 2021 Senate elections. Skullman says, sorry, that was a mistake. I meant to stream. I'll do it. Let's see. Wait, Dan's already done it. And I suppose I will probably go back to a comment that I think Skullman has expressed that saying, let's see, oops, my mistake. Let me find it. Let's see, I think, oh yeah, those savagey, Masonic, homophobic Muslims voting for the white English woman in the party led by a gay Jew, which, arguably not the way I would probably say it, but it does seem a bit, let's see, a bit hard to believe that, I guess, if socially conservative Muslim males, let's see, pressuring their wives to vote for, I guess, the Green candidate by that stuff, but I don't know.
To be
That is
fair, I mean,
generally accusations, right?
yeah, that's the accusation. Century Reform just saying that there was loads of family voting going on, so the results weren't particularly valid. The problem with Reform doing this though, and with Farage's party doing this, is that this is a tactic that they've done so many times that it's basically a boy who cries wolf situation.
I remember
Every
they did this in Peterborough.
Yeah, they did the same thing in Peterborough, but even before that, they did the same thing during the Oldham by-election that happened back in the day. Um, back in the day, back in 2015, shortly before Corbyn became leader, there was a by-election in Oldham, and Labour won that. And at the time, there was a lot of speculation that UKIP was going to win it. They didn't in the end. Labour won it comfortably, and they actually increased their majority. Um, but when that happened, Farage came out and basically said, "Oh, it was loads of postal votes that rigged it in favour of Labour." So he's made this accusation so many times that it's basically just yet another example of sour grapes, more than
Ah,
likely. Now, I mean, of course, there could be an investigation that does indeed prove it to be correct, but more than likely, this seems to be a case of sour grapes for the most part, anyway, with a small grain of truth thrown into it.
okay. And as it was, fair enough. And as was, I suppose, since Farage has been doing his standard complaining, he won't learn any lessons from it, basically.
No, I mean, to be fair with Farage, given the scale of the challenge that they faced in Gorton, I think that Reform did as well as they realistically could have done. Like, I always thought that Reform's ceiling in Gorton was 30%. I didn't think it was possible for them to get more than that. And the reason for that is because not Manchester, Gorton and Denton is a very polarized and split constituency. because you've got the Gorton area, which is very diverse, both ethnically and religiously, but then
Mhm.
you've got the Denton area, which is overwhelmingly white working class.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. And my
and
understanding, these were like two different constituencies merged together to make it look like some sort of axe-shaped thing. And
yes,
arguably, over the recent years, the white working class has become very more right-wing leaning to voting, let's say, conservative or reform parties against socially liberal left-wing parties or centre-left parties, if you will. But yeah, go on.
yeah, that is what has happened, and basically what happened with the situation is that I found it difficult to believe that Reform would get above 30% because they had almost no support in Gorton whatsoever. But their support was overwhelming in Denton. But the problem is the way the Gorton and Denton by-election constituency works is that because it was created in 2024 by the Boundary Commission to create equal-sized constituencies in terms of population, the Gorton area is roughly 55,000, and the Denton area is 26,000. And so as a result, Reform always had a very low ceiling in this constituency because they simply didn't have the demographics in their favour. Um, Young, university educated, ethnic minority background, religious minority background, majority constituency, it just was not in their favour to win it in the end. So the only way that they ever could have won it was basically if they got their vote out in Denton really high and the Labour Green vote was split, but it wasn't, so they lost. So I think realistically speaking, Reform did about as well as they could have done in Gorton, and I don't think they could have done any better in this constituency than what they did. So I don't think it's as much of a disaster for Farage as some people make it out to be. I think that if Farage had come third behind Labour, then I think that Reform would have needed to ask questions about strategy and about leadership and why that happened. But overall, I think that Farage and Reform don't really need to do too much introspection about this constituency simply because it just wasn't one that was in their favour.
Oh yeah,
And in terms of target seats, it was like 442 on their list of target seats. So it was never an area that they were ever going to put significant attention into outside of by-elections.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's not a good result. Obviously, they lost, and they came very far behind the Greens. But coming second and achieving 29% of the vote, I think was the realistic best case scenario for Reform. So they did pretty well given the circumstances, I would
Uh,
say.
oh yeah, I think I remember seeing Matt Goodman talk about, oh, we've destroyed the two-party politics and all that stuff, or something like that. But yeah, which I suppose, getting into Matt Goodwin, arguably, I'd probably say one of the things I suppose could have gone in Reform's favor is if like the Green and Labour split was actually a bit more equal divided. That could have let them slip in, but yeah, to be honest, I think Matt Goodwin was arguably a very poor choice for this by-election because not only was he not from the area, but he's also like has a history of attacking, attacking demographics and saying how we need to move away from those and anti-woke, I know that kind of stuff. Let's see, social conservatism, that kind of attacks. It's like, yeah, this guy is not suited for this seat.
Yeah, he wasn't a good choice for this seat. When he was picked, I was kind of stunned, to be honest, because he just came across as a really terminally online pick. Like, I don't honestly know what they were thinking picking him, especially considering the fact that there was a local independent or even the old reform candidate that they could have gotten who would have done possibly better, even if it was ever so slightly than Goodwin did. Goodwin was not a good candidate to pick for this constituency, and it's puzzling that Reform chose him to be their candidate for this thing.
Oh yeah. So yeah, it's honestly, I do wonder if there's at least one lesson they might learn. It's like, okay, maybe we should be more careful on the candidates we pick. Maybe try someone that at least locally, perhaps, because that's the whole point now about where Reform saying that we're going to be choosing party candidates for the people and all that stuff. Though, granted, but the more Tories they're adding, the more that seems less likely, if you ask me, I guess. But who knows?
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they try and put Matt Goodwin in another seat, but I guess it depends on which one is running for a by-election. Because if it's another city area like this one, or part of like one with more progressive, likely to vote for the left or progressives, I think they'd be wasting their time, really.
Yeah, I think that he will definitely be picked as another candidate for another seat in the future. I don't think Reform are going to give up on him. I think that he will be their candidate for another seat that has much more favourable demographics to Reform, and one of which actually is another Greater Manchester seat that could potentially be seeing a by-election in the future as well. And that's the constituency of Makerfield, which is another Greater Manchester constituency on the outskirts in the north of Greater Manchester. And that seat is a Reform Labour marginal. Labour's got a 5,000 majority in that constituency, um, but their vote majority has been cut down massively over the years. Not over the years, between 2019 and 2024. They had a majority back then of about 10 to 15,000, and it was cut down to 5,000. In fact, Labour actually lost votes in Makerfield compared to the last election, and Reform had an 18% gain compared to the last election. The constituency profile is also overwhelmingly white working class, similar to Denton. Um, and in fact, it's so much of this demographic that its makeup of ethnic minority populations is actually below the national average in England. So if Makerfield ends up going to a by-election because the MP resigns due to scandal that they're currently embroiled in, then I think that it's very likely that Goodwin will be picked to be the Reform candidate for that seat. And unfortunately, I think that he's extremely likely to win in Makerfield because the seat has got all the conditions favourable for Reform to win. They managed to cut down the majority in half in the last election, despite only polling 13% on average, and when Labour was double their vote share.
Okay.
And its demographics are heavily supportive towards reform. So
Okay.
if Makerfield does go for a by-election, I think the Reform will very easily win it, probably with like a 10,000 majority, given the current makeup of the seat at the moment and the current political climate at the moment. And I think that Matt Goodwin is very likely to be the Reform candidate for that seat if it goes to a by-election.
So we may have just only temporarily kept Goodwin out of Parliament, which, before we get into more, I'm just going to say, before any more comments, I'm just going to say, Scarman says, rumours of another by-election, Manchester might be coming up. Where Paul says, this being Reform's target of 440, can't really blame Matt Goodwin for the loss, really. And saying, Burnham, we're here we come. Build me NPR and HS2 in full. And Scarman saying, it's funny looking back at Assad numbers Jezza had in 2017 and 2019. Arguably, yes, they probably labels much more secure there. Which I am curious if Goodwin would run in that seat. Could this also be one that Andy Burnham runs in it or something? And could he win it against Goodwin?
That is the thing that also could be the spanner in the work for this, because it really does depend upon who the Labour candidate is for the Makerfield if it goes to a by-election. If it is just another generic Starmer clone, essentially, then they'll be obliterated, similar to what happened in Gorton, but even worse because of how bad the the makeup of that seat is for Labour and how good it is for Reform. But if it's Andy Burnham versus Goodwin, well, for Reform and Labour, then I think that Burnham will win, but probably by a similar amount to what the seat is at the moment. He's the
Okay.
only one I think who could win in Makerfield. Um, if he is not the candidate, then and it's some Starmer clone, then they'll just be wiped out in Makerfield. They won't come close to winning.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's like their best bets is either like Burnham, of course, because Burnham could probably win nearly anywhere in Greater Manchester, and maybe a local candidate that actually people like there, but that one might be a bit less, more 50-50. But yeah. So
Yeah, I mean, my personal opinion on it is I don't think that Burnham will be allowed to be the candidate for Makerfield or basically any parliamentary constituency, because I think that at this point, what's this?
Frank saying some serious fuckery in 11th and Downing Street today. BBC source says reporting NMH is back on. Telegraph maintains it isn't happening.
Not sure what NMH is, but we may get something telling us what that is in a minute. But yeah, back to Burnham being blocked. Yeah, I think that at this point, Starmer is in full bunker mode, like deep siege bunker mode at the moment, where he's refusing to. New medium helicopter. What on earth does new medium helicopter mean?
I have no idea. I'm gonna Google search it.
Right, well, while you
New,
do that, I'll continue with the Burnham thing. The
yeah.
reason I think that he's deep in bunker mode at the moment, Starmer, like he's in a full sort of siege mentality, because from his perspective and Reeves' perspective, basically everybody's out to get him. The left hate him, the right hate him, the centre's becoming disillusioned with him, the Tories hate him, Liberals hate him, well, some Liberals do, and the media also hates him. Basically, everybody hates him. And so he's in full bunker mode and he's doing basically everything in his power to protect his job. And the conditions that existed before Gorton still remain, but even more precarious for Starmer, because as soon as he lets Burnham into Parliament again, and it's after the locals, Burnham will trigger a leadership contest against Starmer and will easily win against Starmer. Um, so Starmer has a massive incentive to block him and stop him from getting into Parliament, because as soon as he does, he's basically signing his resignation speech at that point, resignation letter as well. So I don't think that Starmer will allow Burnham in at all. I think he will keep blocking him over and over again, no matter what the consequence of that is, simply because at this point Starmer is focused solely on protecting his job at the expense of absolutely everything else. So
Okay.
I don't think Burnham will be the Labour candidate for Makerfield if that by-election happens, because I think
Okay.
that Starmer is just going to keep blocking him to stop him from being a threat to him in Parliament.
Okay. Well, apparently, Scottman saying, does Keith have any strength to block Andy again? With Apollo TD saying Keith surely wouldn't block Andy again unless it's right near the end and Starmer's nearly out of the door anyway. So I assume that you said, given what you said, you'll probably still block him even with all that thing, with all those things going on. I believe, right?
Yeah, I do. And the reason for that is because with regards to the argument about strength, I mean, he's as weak as he was. Um, the level of strength that Starmer has now and Gorton is more or less not really changed. He's both. He was an extremely weak position then, and he's an extremely weak position now. But it didn't stop him from blocking Burnham back then, and I don't see it stopping him now. Because again, I think that he's in that feral siege mentality, bunker mentality, where he believes there's an all out assault against him from everybody, and he needs to do all that he can to protect his position because he doesn't want to lose it in such a humiliating fashion.
Okay.
Because it would be a humiliation for him, massively so, to win a 174-seat majority and then to last less time as Prime Minister than Boris Johnson did, with a majority half that, is a massive embarrassing failure and a total humiliation. So I think that he wants to try and preserve his job at all cost, even if that means basically destroying the Labour Party and the government along
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah. Basically, he won't go unless people actually boot him out and saying, "We're sick of you. Get the frick out of here."
Yeah, that's essentially what I think will happen at this point. I
Yeah.
think that, if anything, one of the things that is going to come as a consequence of Gorton is the bunker mentality that exists amongst Starmer and his inner circle is going to get significantly worse. I mean, we're already beginning to see it happen with the complete denial and military grade copium that is being unleashed by Starmer and his acolytes in response to the Gorton by-election.
Oh yeah. Let's see. But yeah. Anyway. Let's see. Besides that, we got a bit of a comment here from apparently Chancellor Rachel Reeves will approve a deal to buy 23 helicopters from Yavo base Leonardo, supporting 3,000 jobs, and the Italian-owned firm warned we're at risk. So I think that's what the helicopter thing was about, and it seems like
Oh,
she's
right, okay. So it's basically a jobs deal then for Yeovil. Right,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So
So it's yeah, it seems like
so
he's like
basically there's a sort of media briefing war going on with that, where the BBC is saying that that deal is going to continue to exist and those jobs are going to be protected, but the Telegraph says it's not happening.
yeah. Anyway, I suppose
I
that I've
mean, so,
left this.
so basically it's just another day in Westminster, complete shit show, basically.
Yeah, it seems like it. Anyway, we've got Sky Echo saying higher. With let's see, people saying hi
Oh,
back.
hello,
So
sir.
let's see. I'm not sure if he's still here because we might have ignored him too long. I apologize, Sky Echo. Let's see. It's sometimes hard to tell how many views you got when the numbers keeps changing. But anyway, we've got Apollo TD saying, to be fair to Keith, there is an all-out assault now from the cabinet. New statement saying cabinet ministers doing media round have made clear they no longer want to stick to the government lines. So let's see.
Well, I mean, well, who can blame them? Because what's the point? I mean, they U-turn on almost everything, and they have to debase themselves defending the indefensible. And when things inevitably go wrong, they're made to look like idiots. So I don't blame them for not wanting to follow the government line anymore, when it will probably change by this time next week, and they have to defend what they know is wrong, and when it ends up being wrong, they get made to look like idiots, even though they knew that it was going to happen in the first place. So
Oh, yeah.
I don't really blame the cabinet for not wanting to live in La La Land and not acknowledge reality.
Honestly, if it probably wasn't the fact that the locals, they probably would have stabbed him in the back already. Or like, honestly, I think Starmer's lucky that we're not in the medieval times because I'm pretty certain he would probably get literally stabbed in the back now because he's just that aged.
It's, I mean, it's just very surreal. Like, you've got a government which is so split and divided and doesn't have any cohesion whatsoever. Um, like, you've got the PM and his inner circle, who are true dying-the-wall believers who don't have a clue, think everything. Basically, they're like that Vivian woman on Twitter, just completely crazy and out of touch. You've got that. And then you've got the cabinet ministers who are bound by collective responsibility, but deep down in their heart know that this is a complete mess and that this Labour government is the Titanic that's inches away from the iceberg, and they're screaming that it's going to hit the iceberg and the ship's going to sink, but the captain refuses to change course. And then you've got the Parliamentary Labour Party that's just in a complete feral mood, perpetually furious and in revolt against the leadership. So
Okay.
it's just a mess. It's just a complete mess. There's no cohesion at all. There's no unity. There's just nothing. You've essentially got a government made up of three factions. The PM in his inner circle, the cabinet ministers who are not in the inner circle but not in the PLP, and then the PLP. And all of them have got their different goals, agendas, and all sorts. It's a mess. It's
Yeah.
an absolute mess.
He doesn't even have the backing of the membership because you need at least something backing you, and that's not even the case. Let's see. Anyway, Scarman says it all hinges on whether or not the soft left / melt left can find a spine. That is true. Let's see. There's also reports that nearly every member of the cabinet is fed up with Keith now and is actively detest the bloke. Don't blame them, as you said.
Don't blame them. I really don't blame them, because even ignoring the politics aspect of all of this, it would be, if you were made to by your boss at a company to go and defend the indefensible in front of either your customers or the board of directors, over and over and over again, even though you know deep down in your heart that they are right and this CEO is wrong, you would eventually grow to hate that CEO as well. So I don't blame the cabinet for being that way at this point.
Oh yeah, he's basically as hated as Mr. Burns is, if you ask me. Sky Echo saying John McDonnell and Corbyn are going to be poking at the government ministers for sure. That would be a fun thing to watch. Let's see, and he has also said something to Sweeney Tad, and Apollo TD has said, John, can you get up the Simpsons photo post I just sent in Bullet from Politics UK? Sure, I've just got that now, and I'm just going to share it here. And this is the tweet where it says, apparently, some ministers are sharing around the meme of WhatsApp comparing Keir Starmer to Principal Skimmer from the Simpsons episode over his approach to Green Party. Is he going like, am I out of touch? No, it's the voters who are wrong, and the Greens with their communication skills and positive policies, I mean decisive and sectarian politics, we must be more like fellow losers for reform to win. Oh.
Oh man, I mean, that just sums up the state of the Prime Minister and his position. I mean, just in complete la la land. I mean, I was stunned when I read his speech earlier today that he sent out to the ministers, because I thought there would have been at least some token acknowledgement. I thought there would have been at least something like, okay, in our early days, we went maybe a bit too far in going after reform, and so we need to pivot more to the centre. We listen to the concerns of voters, and we will promise to do better and to try and appeal to the Green voters that we lost and get them back into the fold. I thought it would at least be token stuff like that. But it wasn't even that. It was pretty much just, I'm right, you're wrong, I'm going to continue to do what I want, and if you don't like it, here is the finger. That's essentially the attitude that he took, and I was just stunned, because that's a level of contempt that I don't think even Boris would have the balls to do.
Yeah. Let's see. No matter how badly certain politicians eventually had their downfalls, be it Thatcher, Blair, well, at least those two knew when to step down at some point, I guess. But Boris, let's see, knew their time was up. But it seems like Starmer just absolutely refuses to admit that he's mucked up in any way. Anyway, Sky Echo has also put, what's the bet on reform no show at PMQs? I have no idea. And he's done like a love green heart fist thing. And Scarman says McDonald won't do anything. The man is pathetic. As you can see, Scarman has completely lost faith in John McDonald.
Hard not to be honest, because he kind of is the king of debasing himself for not much in return, unfortunately.
Yeah, he has not exactly been any bits. He's been his own worst enemy since 2019. Let's see. Apology says if McSweeney was still number 10, would Keith have been more or less out of touch today?
I think less, because I think well McSweeney would have resigned today. I mean, he was already planning to do so about a month before this by-election happened, because he knew that Labour were going to get stomped in it. So he would have resigned, but I think that he probably would have been less out of touch, because he would have at least had a scapegoat to blame for Gorton, and so I think that he would have been slightly less out of touch today, because he would have at least had a scapegoat for Gorton, even if it wasn't true.
Fair enough. I mean, at the very least, McSweeney seems to be at least more politically aware than Keir Starmer, at the very least. But yeah, so you might have been able to give him advice on that, but who knows? But yeah. Anyway, apparently Apollo TD has done this. Another saying there's the threat of a snap election called by Keith is far more real than when Boris used to threaten it. Which,
well, I mean, 1 is greater than 0, but it's still a low number. I mean, yeah, sure, the threat of it is more real, but an early election can only be triggered if MPs agree to it, and
no
well,
way they're going to do that.
Labour MPs are not going to vote to end their careers after 2 years because the Prime Minister has thrown his toys out of the pram.
Yeah, if anything, they will then say, "No, we're getting rid of you. We're getting rid of you now."
I mean, at that point, I think what would happen is that if Starmer threatens to call a snap election in response to the May locals and a leadership and a revolt against him, I think at that point you would basically have a full-blown civil war and standoff within the PLP. And at that point, I think the PLP would say to Starmer, either you go, or when the budget comes up in the autumn, we'll vote down the budget and kick you out that way.
Fair enough.
Because the way budget votes work is there are no confidence votes in the government. If you lose a budget vote, the government dissolves. It just falls at that point because you have no confidence. Because if you can't pass your budget, then it's widely seen that you don't have the confidence of the House of Parliament anymore. So the government falls and another one has to be formed within 2 weeks. And if it isn't, a snap election happens.
Okay.
So I think that's what would happen. I think if Starmer threatened a snap election, the PLP would just go full revolt mode, vote down the snap election, and said that if he didn't go, they'd vote down the budget to kick him out.
Okay, fair enough. Let's see. Party say you don't need MPs' consent anymore for early election. Boris will repeal the Fixed Term Parliament Act. Election power solely with the PM now.
Well, surely they have to have some kind of consent to it. They can't. You can't have just an election because the PM is like, yeah, sure.
Who knows? But yeah. So anyway, I suppose. Let's see. Scottman says, "Shame the NEC is filled with his puppets. They could sack his membership if they weren't." Yeah, arguably that won't change until at least I guess September, unfortunately. But anyway, I suppose one thing we should probably probably talk about is what's the topic of the conversation now? Had to drop out about 10 minutes. Basically, we've been talking about Starmer's inability to learn from his mistakes, basically, and willing to even kill the party just to stay on. I
Yeah,
think that's
basically, we're basically talking about the fact that Keir Starmer and the Labour inner circle, the PM inner circle in particular, is just completely and utterly out of touch and going into full bunker mode. The worst things get, which in turn makes a bad situation even worse.
Yep. Let's see. So that's basically what we're doing. Like, and then Paul says, yeah, I think if a budget vote fails in the House and it has 2 weeks to form a government to pass a budget, if they don't, it's an election, which will probably mean you get an acting PM until they can select a new one. But yeah, something called a snap election without even consulting his cabinet. Arguably, he probably should have done that. But
Didn't
yeah.
he have had to get some kind of approval for it, where once he did call one, they just had to go along with it because it was too late at that point, and also because by that point, we were already expecting an early election to occur. Everybody thought it was going to happen in the autumn of that year, but summer was always a possibility of it happening as well.
So anyway, we've got Skullman saying it's all fine. It's the storm bunker. So yeah, very nice. Anyway, I suppose perhaps I guess minor topic, but I guess we could still talk about that. Let's see, what would this by-election have on the impact on I guess the Tories and the Lib Dems? I mean, they're never going to win, but the Tories have lost their deposit. I think the first time in a while in this seat, and the Lib Dems have lost a bit of their vote share to the Greens, arguably, as well. I'm just wondering how this by-election will also impact them, because while it's a disaster for Labour, it's not really good for like the uni parties in general, because they
I
barely
think
get over 25% of the vote.
I think for the Liberal Democrats, it doesn't really make much difference. Gorton was never a constituency they ever did well in, and as this graph shows, they lost their deposit in the general election here as well. So for the Lib Dems, it doesn't mean much. They didn't expect to come anywhere near close to winning, and many of them expected they'd lose their deposit again, and they did. So I mean, it sucks for them, but they expected that it was going to be bad for them, and it was. I think the more interesting question. So I don't think it will impact the Lib Dems that much. I think it's just they expected it to happen, and that's that. Um,
Okay.
for the Tories, though, I think it's a little bit more interesting, but not as interesting as it is for Reform, Greens, and Labour. This result for the Tories was apocalyptically bad. Like 98% of people in the constituency voted against the Tories. And it's, I mean, it's quite incredible, really. It's their worst result in an election ever. I think the last time they did this badly goes all the way back to like 1890. um, so
1890.
yeah, I
Wow.
mean,
I
I
think there
don't
might have been
know.
an election in 1982 they did bad in, but I'm not sure.
Not as bad as this. Like 2% of the vote is incredibly bad. Like I mean, I've seen parties in the past get higher percentage of the vote than that that are outright piss take joke parties. Like there was a like to give you an idea of how bad the Tories did in this election, there is an old political party. Well, I say party; it was more of a joke organisation that was set up in it was either my constituency or the neighbouring constituency that was called the English Fry Up Party, and the whole platform of it was basically everybody gets a free English breakfast every morning provided by the government. That's essentially what the party's platform was. Basically, a joke party. Um, they got in one of those elections 800 votes, so which is 100 votes more than the Tories did in Gorton. So, so yeah, I mean, it was just a disaster, just an
Yeah.
absolute flop, complete failure for them, and they lost their deposit.
So, yeah.
I mean, what it shows more than anything else, the whole Kemi bounce that SW1 journalists were obsessed with towards the end of last year is completely fake and doesn't exist. and that the Tories still remain in as dire of a position as they were before. Although, in fairness to the Tories, I think the argument they probably make is, well, we tactically voted late a reform to stop the Greens, but even then, I don't think that really makes up as bad as a result. It's like 2% of the vote. It's just
Yeah, arguably, this is not going to do her Kim any favors. She's not at the moment in immediate threat of being replaced, but this might be the first sign that she needs to worry again after when she seemingly got a bounce, if you will. So she'll probably have to accept that, okay, this bounce isn't as strong as she at least thinks it is. So,
I
yeah.
think what it does is it basically puts the spotlight on her in a way that hasn't been put on her leadership since the summer of last year, where it's essentially many people will probably be within the Tory party asking questions about, well, is she the right woman to lead us if she's leading us to these disastrous electoral results? It's going to start up those conversations again, but I don't expect them to gain much traction until we get to the locals.
Yeah.
The one
Argu-
benefit, the one benefit that Kemi Badenoch does have, is that all her main rival in Bobby Jenrick is gone. He's not in the Tories anymore. He's in Reform. So the advantage that she has is that she really just doesn't have anybody who could potentially challenge her now that her main challenger is gone. So even if the locals for the Tories is a complete disaster, she's in a much more secure position than, say, Starmer is, because she just doesn't have anybody to challenge her whatsoever because of there being so few MPs
what
and
about
because
James Cleverly? Could he challenge her or something?
I think he is the favourite to replace her if she goes. Um, but the problem with him is that can he really bring back anybody to the Tories that Kemi Badenoch can't? And the answer to that, in my opinion, is I just don't think he can. I don't think he can win back anybody that the Tories have lost.
Not
So it
even
just so
moderate
you
voters?
ultimately ask the question of, well, what is the point in replacing the leader if it isn't going to improve anything?
I suppose the only thing is, like, maybe not be completely annihilated, which might be also the case with Labour. But yeah, anyway, Apollo TD says, I said 10 to 14 months ago Keith would hang on until May 2027. Clear I was the wrong then. Skullman replied saying, I've been saying Keith would be gone in 2026 since December 2023. Sky Echo says, they know they're going to get right kicking in May, so or they're going to keep their power dry until then. Leadership challenge immediately after, or mega policy change through spring budget. If I'm saying clearly he's going to challenge, and Sky Echo says great minds and all that. So
Oh yeah, that's because you mentioned that it being cleverly before you read out that comment. But yeah, I
yeah,
mean that's the overall take from what the Tory catastrophe in this seat is. Like, it didn't get much of any coverage at all because everybody knew the Tories were going to do incredibly badly and were probably going to lose their deposit.
mm-hmm.
But they aren't really the main focus of attention because it was all eyes were on Reform, Labour, and Greens for this seat. And so basically, the implications for the Tories is that it will raise questions again about Badenoch's leadership. Um, but she's in a much more secure position than Starmer is because of the lack of any clear alternative to her whatsoever. And um, she doesn't have as much to worry about as the others, as well as the fact that her leadership proponents would probably not help the situation with the Tories. Um, and the other thing is the other thing I think more than anything else, I think that this lack of attention that the Tories have got, given how bad of a result this was for them, really highlights um, how irrelevant the Tory party actually is. Because if this was a traditional election, before all this fragmentation happened, then this would have been Labour wins it easily with the Tories on a very low share of the vote. And so all the conversation would have been focused on both Labour and Tories. But now, pretty much nobody's talking about the Tories' performance in this by-election, despite the fact it was catastrophic. And I think that really shows how utterly irrelevant the Tory party is now, and how all the focus for the right wing of the political spectrum is all on reform now. And the Tories are basically not even background characters, they're basically extras in a show at this point.
Anyway, PolTD says the Tories need to focus on moderate Cameroons now. So in other words, James Fielding. but yeah, but that's probably their best bet at least. But yeah, arguably I'd say for the Tories.
I mean, at this stage, I would say, yeah. I mean, the Lib Dems could have potentially filled that void, but I think with Ed Davey and the general makeup of the Lib Dems, I don't think they can do that at this point. So I think that going full David Cameron style Tory with somebody like James Cleverly could probably get some support back for them, but I think that would only result in them losing, Labour losing a couple of points, Lib Dems losing a couple of points, and it going to the Tories, which could potentially mean that they end up in second place to Reform consistently in the averages, but I still think there is a hard limit on that kind of politics now.
Yeah, at the very least, I'd say for the Tories, their best ritzy bet now is to survive and not be completely annihilated by losing any more seats to Reform or any other parties, and let ritzy Reform go in government for a bit. Let's see, in some form or another, let them screw up, and then try and put themselves as the alternative to Reforms. Screw up, saying, "Okay, we've had a bit of time out. We've reflected. We've changed." Let's see, and you've seen what Labour's like in government. You've seen what Reform is like in government. But let's see, even though last part of our government wasn't exactly stellar, we are a lot more stable than let's see the alternatives you've been given or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
I
could
think
vote.
the only way I ever could see Cameronism making a comeback would basically be if everyone fails, like Reform fail, Labour fail, the Greens fail, the far right fail, like all the far left fail, like all of these people come in and they lead chaotic governments. That after 20 years of that nonsense, you could potentially have people going, well, the last time we had a stable prime minister in government was when David Cameron was in charge, so let's go back to that, so at least we've got stability. But I think that kind of thing is like decades away from happening, if it ever happens at all. I think for now, in the immediate future, there isn't really much in the way of success for Cameronism. Um, other than to gain a few bit extra points in the polls.
Okay, fair enough. So it's more like short-term, moderate success at best at the moment. Let's see.
Yeah, I,
Since I think the Kenny bounce in the polls for the Tories doesn't reflect reality. And
that's
Sky, you say what?
yeah, that's true. I would agree. It was mainly an SW1 phenomenon that never was reflected in the polls.
Let's see. Sky Echo says Reform is likely to take any Scotland seats in May because the Tories are pretty much finished here, and the Greens aren't popular in NSO and G dependent areas. Okay.
I know what that means. Yeah, North Sea oil and gas. That's what that means.
Yes, because they're more pro, let's see, gas oil, less and fracking, less environment, net zero, that kind of thing.
But basically, what is happening there is the people who live in northeast Scotland find Richard Tice's offer to be very enticing, and that's why they're voting for reform, because they are
Okay.
very enticed by Richard.
Anyway, Frank says if Restore becomes a political threat and takes a Reform MP, a by-election in Makerfield, would that be extremely interesting?
Well, I mean, the, this sort of question is kind of like asking if a unicorn flew over a rainbow in Makerfield, would that be interesting? I mean, yes, it would be interesting, but it's never going to happen. Like, look, when it comes to Restore, I think what Gorton proved is just how completely terminally online the whole Restore phenomenon is for the moment. Because the Monster Raving Loony Party got more votes than Advanced UK, and Advanced UK is basically a merger with Reform at this point. So Restore are just nothing. I've said this before, but if a party like Restore or Restore themselves are ever going to become relevant in this country, then they would need to have Reform win a majority at the election and then completely screw up. That's the only way a party like Restore is ever going to do well. Until that day comes, they're a completely irrelevant, terminally online phenomenon that doesn't exist in the real world.
Yeah, that is fair. A non-political entity, basically. Anyway,
Yeah,
let's see.
I'll,
Apologies.
I'll say this for now. At least until there's something else that comes along, Restore Britain is going to be my pick for non-entity of the ward, non-entity of the year in the Milky Awards this year.
All right. Let's see. Let's see. Myra, start campaigning, Tom. See if you can get everyone else to do it. But yeah. Anyway, the Tories. Apollo TD says the Tories are so lucky they have PMQs weekly and Cammy's budget response. Otherwise, not as official opposition, they collapse to like 5 to 7% nationally, possibly lower. Yeah.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, PMQs and the budget response is basically the only thing that keeps them relevant because they are technically the official opposition, so they get those little benefits. But
Yeah.
if it
Honestly.
wasn't for that,
Oh
then
yeah.
yeah, they'd probably be polling about where UKIP are polling at the moment.
Yeah. Let's see. Honestly, but at this point, it'd probably be more interesting if Ed Davey was the leader of the opposition. Maybe he'd actually do something. But yeah, anyway, Scarman says the far left were never winning. But
You
to be fair,
never say never. Things could get so bad here that maybe one day they do win.
yeah, for all we know, let's see, the country might be desperate enough to vote George Galloway, and who knows, maybe they actually would get rid of immigration.
Oh boy. I mean, if that happens, then Saddam's legacy lives on. I mean, that's what happens.
Oh yeah, yeah. Let's see. Yeah, no, I don't think that. To be fair, there's enough too many people that probably hate him to ever let that happen. Let's see. Apolty says current PM strategy is Farage, Polanski, far right, Lib Dems, Cameron. From what you've described, I think Tom earlier.
I think I'd probably throw the far left in between the far right and Lib Dems, but yeah, I'd agree with that.
Okay. Let's see. Apollo Kemi's personal approval did improve by 10 to 20%, but Tories are so irrelevant. Her personal approval didn't move voting attention. Yeah, she's just not charismatic to the public enough. Well, Restore could cost Reform a seat. That is probably the best reform Restore could actually do to Reform. But even then, that seems very unlikely.
Yeah, exceptionally unlikely, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, I think we've just about more or less covered everything this by-election can. Though, granted, I assume that Swiss will probably want to do a stream about it. So either I don't know some point this weekend or maybe even Monday, and maybe we'll get some more details on the by-election then, and maybe some more updates. But I think we've basically covered everything.
Yeah, we have. I mean, I guess in that case, final thoughts, a sort of summary of everything that's been covered. Gorton and Denton had a by-election after Andrew Gwynn resigned. The Greens won easily with a 12% lead and a 5,000 or so majority to Reform. the Labour Party in a solid third, complete catastrophe for Labour, middling result for Reform, and good, excellent result for the Greens, and complete catastrophe for Tories as well. The Green Party in the future will now be able to position itself as the progressive alternative to both Labour and the best alternative to stop Reform from winning in certain seats, whilst Labour will continue to flounder and crumble even more whilst being in total denial of the situation. Raises further questions about Starmer's leadership, and there'll be more infighting and chaos within Labour in the days to come, and probably a lot more discontent that will be openly expressed in public and briefings by ministers and MPs.
Okay.
And ultimately, I think that Gorton and Denton will be a prelude to what's to come for the May local elections.
Okay, fair enough. That's fair. I just want 2 more comments from Scoman and Apollo Deed saying Apollo Deed, Farage, far right, Polanski, neo libs, far left. Let's see what Early thinks. And he thinks good thing about lower end restores actually grifters like Habib, technically at UKIP, Homeland Party have been neutralized, I guess. But all right. But yeah, I think you pretty much summed it up. This is a huge victory to the Greens, and they can keep on rising. Starmer's days looking more and more less numbered. Let's see, especially since they could have won the seat if they had Andy Burnham. Reform won't learn a thing from it and probably continue to do what they do. And of course, the Tories being completely irrelevant, they'll have to try and rethink what to do to make sure they can at least keep deposits in the future at the very least. Otherwise, no one will stand them. Let's see, and I guess Skyker says Greens could do what Reform did in the last locals. Maybe we'll have to wait and see on that regard. But yeah,
very possible, but it's definitely a wait and see, I'd say.
Yeah, at the very least, it could be possible Greens come in second. But yeah,
they could very well come in second in lots of places, which really confirms the whole new 2-party system being Reform and Greens now.
Yeah. Which I think was kind of just slightly different from what I think Pterodax once thought back in 2019 when it was like Reform, Brexit and Lib Dems. But yeah, anyway, Apology D says nice, great stream, guys. Thank you, and Skyaka says nice stream, guys. So yeah, it was fun. Thank you, Tom, for coming on. I'll be honest, I was about to nearly consider ending the stream without Frank around, since I've probably said all I could say by myself. But thanks to you, we got an extra hour and 30 minutes of this stream, and have detailed discussions. Let's see, Scommon saying good night, and Frank saying brilliant stream, John and Tom. Sorry I couldn't fix my audio. That's okay. Thank you for trying to at least join and give your opinions. Hopefully we can sort out next time you stream. And I suppose thank you, Skullman and Apology Deed, for your comments during the time when Frank was gone, since that helped me continue this topics at least. And thank you, Sky Echo, for joining us. Hopefully, now that Swiss has helped promoted my channel a bit, there'll be more of his regulars to show up when he's not around. So yeah, let's see. But I'm sure me and Tom will be back discussing this by-election when Swiss is ready to do so. But for now, we are signing off. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.